Discover the miraculous transformations in the book of Joshua, God's shocking plan revealed. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, as dawn gently brushed the plains of Moab, echoes of past miracles hung in the air like a fragrant incense, wrapping around the weary camp of the Israelites. They had wandered for 40 years, gripped by the weight of the wilderness, waiting for God's decisive word. And now, with Moses gone, the heavy mantle of leadership rested on Joshua, a faithful servant who had walked closely with the great prophet. He stood at the precipice of history, poised to lead an entire nation into the promised land, a land promised long before their forefathers set foot in Egypt. With each heartbeat, Joshua felt the gravity of his new role enveloping him. The stories of their miraculous deliverance from Egypt flooded his mind, the 10 plagues that shattered Pharaoh's resolve, the parting of the Red Sea that opened a path through chaos, and the divine provision of manna in the desolate wilderness. These memories ignited a flicker of hope in his heart, but doubt lurked in the shadows, whispering its fears of inadequacy. Determined, Joshua ascended the neighboring mountainside, seeking the Lord's guidance. The morning sun bathed the land in golden hues, casting a radiant light that seemed to beckon him closer to God. As he prayed fervently, the atmosphere shifted, and he sensed the Lord's powerful presence enveloping him. In a moment of divine clarity, the voice of God resonated in his soul: "Be strong and courageous, do not be afraid or dismayed, for I am with you wherever you go." A covenant forged within him ignited an unwavering commitment to lead the people forward, armed with the assurance of God's constant presence. With a renewed spirit, Joshua descended the mountainside, determination etched upon his face. Gathering the leaders of the tribes, he shared the charge appointed to him by God. The air turned electric with anticipation as Joshua recounted their miraculous past: the night of deliverance, the cloud by day, the fire by night. He instructed them to prepare provisions for 3 days. The Jordan River awaited their crossing, and soon they would step into a destiny forged by the Almighty. As soon as the priests carry the Ark of the Covenant and their feet touch the waters, the river will part, just as the sea did before, he assured them, igniting memories of faith that had carried them through each trial. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. The day of crossing dawned, imbued with an almost sacred awe. Families, weary from centuries of wandering, gathered by the banks of the Jordan, their eyes fixed on the tumultuous waters. The priests came forward, carrying the ark, a steadfast emblem of God's promise. As the river swelled, Joshua called to the people, "Do not fear their mighty rush. Focus on the Lord's power, for he shall make a way." And as they stepped into the torrents, a hush fell, a moment of divine tension, hearts beating with trepidation. Then, as if creation itself obeyed the command of its maker, the waters parted. Dry ground emerged, revealing a path forged by faith, through which the entire nation walked, witnesses to God's might. In the awe-filled silence, Joshua gathered 12 stones from the riverbed to build an altar, a tangible reminder of God's miraculous deliverance. As they erected it at Gilgal, he urged them to tell their children of this extraordinary day, to pass on their legacy of faith. But lurking on the horizon was Jericho, a city fortified and insurmountable, casting a shadow on their hearts. A new test brewed for Joshua and the people, as God's unexpected strategy awaited a plan destined not for swords but for obedience. The path ahead shimmered with both daunting challenges and the thrill of God's divine mystery. Would they follow his lead, and could Joshua truly guide them through the storm ahead? The unfolding of God's sovereign plan was only just beginning. As the dawn of a new day broke over Gilgal, the Israelites stood poised on the cusp of their destiny, the stone altar gleaming under the sun, a monument to God's faithfulness. Yet, uncertainty whispered in the hearts of many as they gazed toward Jericho, its formidable walls towering like an unyielding fortress. Familiar stories of God's deliverance lingered in their minds, yet the daunting challenge before them stretched their faith to its limits. Joshua took a moment to gaze down the vale toward the city, his heart heavy with the weight of leadership. He called upon the Lord once more, seeking clarity for the moment that lay ahead. "O Lord, how shall we conquer this city that looks down upon us? Give me wisdom to lead thy people," he prayed, the fervor of his spirit rising like incense before the Almighty. In response to his earnest plea, the Lord spoke, "See, I have given Jericho into your hand, and its king, and the mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all you men of war, you shall go around the city once. Thus you shall do for 6 days." A holy conviction surged through Joshua, igniting a spark of divine strategy that seemed both bewildering and awe-inspiring. These were not the tactics of war that men would devise, for they relied on silent obedience rather than clashing swords. Captivated by the Lord's instructions, Joshua rallied the leaders once more. "Prepare yourselves. On the morrow, we shall march. Our victory shall be seen, not through our strength, but by obedience to his command." The leaders murmured among themselves, some with doubt, others igniting with faith as they reflected on the wilderness lessons of trust. With the Ark of the Covenant leading them, enclosing the sacred presence of God, the people stepped forward into their appointed task. Each day, they walked in silence, their footsteps echoing against the stone, a stark contrast to the noise of battle anticipated by mortals. The inhabitants of Jericho, from their sheltered vantage points, watched with eyes filled with scorn and mockery, questioning the resolve of these peculiar invaders. On the 7th day, the atmosphere crackled with an unveiled anticipation. The weary march had proven relentless yet steady, each step forging unity among the Israelites. Joshua called the people together, every heart beating in harmony. "Now we will encircle the city 7 times, and at the end, the priests shall blow the trumpets. When you hear the sound, shout with all your might. For the Lord has given you the city." As they began their final circuit, a silence thicker than the air enveloped Jericho, broken only by the sound of the priests' trumpets, a sound heralding divine intervention. The people surged with shouts of victory, their voices rising like a tempest before a storm, echoing against the walls of Jericho. The moment pressed with suspense, the air trembling with expectation of divine power. Then, as the echoes of their shout reverberated against the stone, a rumbling shook the earth. The very walls of Jericho, forged with human effort, could not withstand the might of the Creator. They crumbled, dust filling the air where once stood the proud edifice. The Israelites rushed forward, emboldened by faith and the promise of God, sweeping into the city as victors, the first display of God's mighty hand in the land flowing with milk and honey. Yet, amidst the turmoil of victory, a shadow of uncertainty remained. What price would they now pay for this triumph? For nestled within the heart of Jericho was a secret, one of mercy and of judgment entwined. As the dust settled, would they remember the voice of God amidst their triumphs? Would they heed his warnings against future transgressions? The unfolding of God's sovereign plan was far from over, and the lessons were just beginning to resonate. What lay behind the ruins of Jericho became a divine directive, a question of faith that would test generations yet to come. As the dust hung in the air, the Israelites surged into the city of Jericho, a chorus of triumph mingling with the remnants of trembling walls. In the streets, the echoes of victory were met with a sight that weighed heavily upon their hearts. The inhabitants of Jericho sprawled in despair, some fleeing, others paralyzed by fear before the might of the God of Israel. Joshua moved through the throng of warriors, his spirit conflicted as he beheld the spoils and the conquests, yet he remembered the Lord's command about the oath. He called out to the people, "Do not forget the warning given to us. The city and all that is in it are devoted to the Lord. Only Rahab the harlot and those who are with her in her house shall live, for she hid the messengers we sent." With that, he turned to 2 of the spies who had ventured into Jericho, the very men who had brought back the report of hope. "Go, find Rahab and uphold the promise we made to her." The urgency in his voice reminded them that mercy, when offered, must be honored. It is the very fabric of God's covenant. Meanwhile, in the shadows of the fallen walls, a scarlet thread hung as a beacon of hope amidst judgment. Rahab, trembling yet steadfast, gathered her family, as the spies instructed, and they took refuge in the security of her home. The hearts of her kin, initially swayed by fear, now braved the unknown, bolstered by the promise issued by the men of Israel. As the sun dipped beyond the horizon, the cries of victory soon gave way to contemplation. As twilight draped the land, Joshua assembled the leaders once more, his brow furrowed with the weight of what must follow. "We have been called to be a holy nation," he reminded them. "Let us not tarnish this victory by seeking the precious spoil of this city, for it is dedicated to the Lord." Yet, amidst their numbers, a voice filled with discontent stirred. Achan, son of Carmi and of the tribe of Judah, looked upon the gold and the garments hidden among the ruins. The allure of treasures blinded him, and his heart turned from obedience. Quietly, with furtive desperation, he gathered the silver and took the fine linen, burying them beneath his tent, while the community celebrated their newfound victory. The next day dawned anew, and with it, Joshua prepared the people for their next conquest, for the land of Ai lay before them. "Let us not grow complacent," he instructed. "The Lord has delivered Jericho, but we must remain vigilant in our devotion." In the council of the elders, uncertainty swirled. They had witnessed the collapse of Jericho and felt invincible, yet they sensed a tremor of unease unrivaled by their previous triumphs. As they approached Ai, they were met with unexpected resistance, their forces recoiled in confusion and dismay. The hearts of the warriors fell, and Joshua's face was contorted by grief as he fell to his knees before the Lord. "O Lord, why have you brought this upon us?" he cried out. "What has happened to your promise?" The voice of God came stern and clear amidst the silence that followed. "Israel has sinned, they have transgressed my covenant. There is a devoted thing among you." The realization struck Joshua like a thunderclap, setting forth a determination to root out the disobedience that endangered them. As they discerned God's voice more keenly, a solemn dread fell over the assembly. They would soon learn that God's gracious hand could be both merciful and just, and the sacredness of his covenant could not be taken lightly. In the midst of their turmoil, the thread of divine purpose unraveled ever further. A sacred call to holiness was taking shape amidst the ruins of Jericho, ripple effects woven into the heart of God's plan for his chosen people. What future confrontations awaited them on the horizon? Would they heed the lessons of judgment, or turn from the path set before them? The divine mandate beckoned, yet it stirred a question of faith that would confront them all, and echo down through the generations, revealing God's sovereign plan unfurling with patience and power. Joshua rose early in the morning, called by the weight of the divine message that loomed heavy upon his spirit. He gathered the leaders of Israel at the entrance of the tent of meeting. "Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you," he proclaimed, the urgency of the command infused with unwavering faith. The people listened with mixed expressions of anticipation and trepidation. They had tasted victory, yet the echo of their lament still clung to their hearts like morning mist. Joshua instructed them, "Search your camp. Let not a single soul be lost through deception. For the Lord sees all, our obedience will secure his favor." Then he turned to the priests and said, "Take up the Ark of the Covenant and pass before the people." The priests obeyed, lifting the sacred chest that housed the tablets of the covenant, a tangible reminder of God's unbreakable promise. The presence of the Lord went before them, guiding their steps. As they approached the valley leading to Ai, a stark contrast enveloped their spirits. The boldness that had accompanied them in Jericho was met with a heavy silence, as if the land itself recognized their internal struggle. "Let not the hearts of the people faint," reassured Joshua. "For we shall know victory, for the Lord fights for us." With cautious steps, they prepared for battle. Yet, the great sin of Achan loomed unconfronted, a shadow within their ranks, unseen but palpably destructive. As night descended, Joshua wrestled in prayer, beseeching the Lord for insight. "Show me, O God, what must we do to restore your favor among us?" he whispered into the stillness. In the dawn's early light, the sound of footsteps against the earth stirred the camp. By divine direction, Joshua called for the tribes to pass before him. One by one, they came forth, and as each tribe stepped into the light, tension built like thunder in the distance. When the tribe of Judah was called, God's choosing became unmistakable. As his heart raced, Joshua further called each clan of Judah, narrowing the search until finally, Achan was revealed. "My son, Give glory to God of Israel and tell me what you have done. Do not hide it from me, commanded Joshua, his voice resonating with righteous authority. Achan, stricken by the weight of truth and the gravity of consequence, responded with trembling lips. Indeed I have sinned against the Lord. When I saw among the spoils a beautiful mantle and 200 shekels of silver and a bar of gold, I coveted them and took them, and behold, they are hidden in the earth beneath my tent. Heavy silence engulfed the assembly. The gravity of Achan's admission pierced the hearts of many. Joshua's face bore the weight of mourning as he turned to the waiting assembly. Consequence has come upon us due to one man's transgression. Let us act faithfully as the Lord has commanded us. Achan and his possessions were brought forth, and the fear of judgment rippled through the camp. As Achan was stoned and burned, the significance of that day settled like dew upon the ground. Clarity washed over the people. True victory would not be in conquest alone but in the purity of their hearts before God's solemn memorial. They erected a heap of stones to mark the place, a perpetual reminder of the cost of disobedience and the grace found in repentance. A moment of reverence enveloped the assembly, for here lay the stark truth that history would remember, yet the promise of the Lord lingered in the air. Now we can return to the fight renewed and cleansed, declared Joshua. The Lord has rolled away our disgrace. The people responded in unison, their hearts ignited with purpose, and so, they would advance on Ai once more, fortified in spirit and united in faith. With God's favor restored, who could stand against them? Yet in the depths of God's heart, another plan was already unfolding, sending ripples across the fabric of history. What further lessons would they learn in the face of his mighty hand and the unfurling of his eternal covenant? As dawn broke anew over the encampment, the people of Israel stirred with renewed vigor. The air was thick with the promise of divine intervention as Joshua stood at the forefront, the Ark of the Covenant guiding his steps. Prepare yourselves, O Israel, he declared with a voice that resonated in the hearts of the listeners. Today, the Lord will deliver Ai into our hands. The leaders gathered, nodding in allegiance, their faith fortified by the ceremonial act of atonement that had cleansed their transgressions. Joshua, filled with the Spirit of God, laid out the plans for their upcoming assault. Let us approach with wisdom, he shared. Take with you men of valor, and let us strategize to take the city. They formed ranks, warriors clad in armor and equipped with weapons, exuding an aura of confidence that had been reinvigorated by obedience to the Lord. As they moved through the valley, the towering walls of Ai loomed ahead, a formidable stronghold, yet a reminder of the power of the Almighty who had called them to conquer it. The battle is the Lord's, Joshua proclaimed, clutching the sacred staff which had guided him through trials past. He dispatched a contingent of men to lie in wait, poised to ambush the city. When we draw them out, we will strike with the force that is backed by heaven's might. As the Israelite forces approached Ai, the inhabitants reacted with arrogance, believing themselves unassailable within their fortified walls. The rulers of Ai, confident in their strength, marshaled their forces and marched out to face the encroaching Israelites. In that moment, a cry arose among the troops of Ai, their laughter echoing against the valley, little knowing the trap laid before them. At the appointed signal, Joshua raised his hand, and the ambushers surged from their hiding place, overwhelming the city. With a shout, the first wave of the Israelite troops turned and fled toward the wilderness, drawing the men of Ai away from their fortified gates. As the enemy pursued, Joshua and his men moved swiftly, crossing into the city. The Lord has delivered it into our hands. Joshua cried, his heart filled with the victorious presence of God. The sound of trumpets rang out, stirring the hearts of every Israelite, igniting a spirit of unity and purpose. Smoke billowed from the city as it burned, a testimony of God's swift judgment against those who opposed his covenant people. The land cried out in response, a declaration of divine justice. But amid the clamor, a question echoed deep within Joshua's soul: what more is required of us, O Lord? Will this victory bring forth more than just territorial gain? As the dust settled and the city was stripped of its defenses, a profound silence fell upon the battlefield. Israel stood, panting, amidst the ruins, a vivid reminder of God's hand at work. Yet, that silence was soon peppered with a revelation. A messenger from the city had fled, carrying with him the dread of the Almighty's work among his people. In that moment, Joshua turned to the assembly, a glint of revelation sparking in his eye. Look among yourselves. Each victory comes with a trial. We shall now face the hearts of the nations. Their fear will ripple through the earth, and they will hear of our God. And so, the people of Israel rejoiced in victory, only to be reminded of the deeper implications of God's plan. As they began to exult, gossip would travel fast, the glory of the Lord among his people would captivate the lands yet unknown, but the journey was far from over. A new chapter of God's unfolding promises awaited. What would the nations say as they beheld the power of the living God? What further declarations of faith would arise from the ashes of Ai? The time had come for God's sovereign plan to extend, enveloping not just this land, but the world beyond, towards a promise yet untold. And it came to pass that as the smoke rose from the ruins of Ai, Joshua cast his eyes towards the horizon, discerning the nations beyond. Gather the elders and the leaders, he commanded, for he perceived that the Lord was not finished speaking. The assembly gathered, a throng of eager faces reflecting the glory of their recent triumph. Brothers, Joshua began, today we have witnessed the might of our God, yet, I sense his voice beckoning us to greater understanding. The inhabitants of this land, the nations surrounding us, will surely tremble at the news of our victory. But we must not rest upon our laurels nor mistake this battle for the last. There is work yet to be done. As he spoke, the hearts of the people swelled with hope, but shadows of apprehension began to loom. A weighty stillness hung in the air, as they knew well the trials that lay ahead. Shall we not, then, inquire of the Lord? Let us seek counsel with him before we move forward. So Joshua called for the priest to bring forth the Urim and Thummim, and he beseeched the Lord on behalf of Israel. O Lord God of our fathers, grant us wisdom. We have conquered Ai, what is your divine will for our next steps? And while the people waited, a whisper arose among them, the memory of past victories merging with the dread of past failures. They recalled the sin of Achan, whose greed had disrupted their communion with God, and they trembled, for they understood deep within that obedience lay the very foundation of blessing. Then the Spirit of God stirred, and a revelation soared above the assembly like a beacon of light. God will show us the way, cried the high priest, his voice carrying as if to pierce through the clouds. We must consecrate ourselves anew. Following his command, the people stripped themselves of all unholy things, washing their garments, fasting and praying, seeking the face of the Almighty with fervor. Joshua led them in confession, a collective voice lifted in humble surrender, we have erred, O Lord. Purify our hearts, for we are your people. In that fervent gathering, the divine presence enveloped them, and like the rising sun, God's voice broke forth, my children, I have heard your cry. The hearts of the nations shall indeed quake at what they behold, but there awaits a formidable foe greater than Ai that you must face. Joshua listened intently, the weight of the Lord's words pressing upon him. Deliverance shall come from unexpected places. Your faith will be tested, but know that I am with you. Lead the people onward with courage, and I shall show you the land you do not yet know. The assembly gasped, the implications of toils to come forging a path in their hearts. The land ahead is vast, and the inhabitants great, Joshua relayed to their troubled souls. It is a time of trial, but fear not. God has given us strength and dominion over that which lies ahead. As the sun dipped low in the sky, the Israelites took to their knees, their hearts unified in passionate prayer, understanding that each victory was laced with the opportunity for deeper reliance on their Creator. Joshua rose and declared with renewed fervor, we shall not shy away from our destiny. For every trial strengthens our faith, and every challenge prepares us for greater glory. This is not the end but the beginning of our journey. And thus, the Israelites prepared to rise once more, the echoes of their faith ringing out. But little did they know that in their quest for faithfulness, darker battles loomed. The hearts of the kingdoms watching would soon become a crucible of conflict, a testament that God's plans were far grander than the victories already claimed. What awaited them beyond the horizon? What if battles were not solely of sword and shield, but of spirit and faith? As they strained towards what was yet unseen, the sovereign plan of God was being etched into the history of his people, a narrative weaving through ages, building a legacy of hope where despair once thrived. The time would soon reveal his faithful hand that leads his people through tempest and trial, toward an eternal promise. And it came to pass, when the morrow dawned, that a weight hung heavily upon the hearts of the people of Israel. They arose from their night of prayer, and the spirit of anticipation was thick in the air. Joshua, having sought the Lord, called for the people to gather once more. He stood before them, his countenance ablaze with a solemn light, for the words of the Lord were upon him. Listen, O Israel! For the Lord your God has commanded us. Joshua proclaimed with a voice piercing through the murmuring of the assembly. We will march to the city of Gibeon, for they have heard of our exploits, and their hearts are sore afraid. The people looked among themselves, murmuring in wonder. They knew not the depth of their mission, unaware that Gibeon would not simply be another victory but a pivotal moment in the history of their conquest. Prepare yourselves to take the spoils of wisdom and unity, Joshua instructed. But be mindful. Our strength lies not in these spoils, but in our fidelity to the covenant of the Lord. For in truth, we are called not merely to conquer, but to demonstrate his righteousness to the lands beyond. The Israelites tightened their garments and girded their loins, with hearts beating in harmony, for they knew their allegiance to God was paramount. As they began their journey at the break of day, the sun shone brilliantly upon them, yet shadows loomed along their path. As they approached Gibeon, the Gibeonites, through cunning and desperation, had devised a scheme. They dressed in tattered clothes and carried moldy bread, presenting themselves as weary travelers from a distant land. We come to you in peace, they implored, their voices trembling. Joshua, seeing their worn appearance, did not seek counsel from the Lord, but rather glanced at the outward signs, neglecting the whisper of caution in his heart. The Gibeonites deceived him, and he made a covenant with them, swearing to protect them with the oath of the Lord, yet as the days passed, the truth of their deception was unveiled, and the children of Israel realized they had been tricked. Murmurs of discontent swirled amongst the people. How could this have happened? One elder questioned, his voice etched with concern. Have we not sought the Lord diligently? In the gathering of leaders, Joshua fell to his knees before the Lord, seeking forgiveness for his misstep. O God of our fathers, have I acted hastily? Reveal to me the depth of this plan. And surely, the Lord spoke once more, a gentle whisper amongst the tumult. Fear not, for even in this misjudgment, I am at work. Your trial with the Gibeonites is a preparation for the battle against the Amorite kings who will soon arise to challenge you. I will show my power through you, for I will fight for you. A radiant glow filled the hearts of the leaders, though uncertainty clung to their minds. Let us prepare our hearts and weapons, Joshua encouraged. The Lord's purpose is unshaken, and through this covenant, I sense a deeper alignment to his will, for deliverance is assured through fidelity, even in imperfect circumstances. Therefore, in faith and trembling, the Israelites approached their unknown future, bound now not only by victory but by trust in God's providence. The rumblings of conflict could be felt on the horizon, as the Amorites seized upon the perceived weakness of Israel. What battle awaited them? How would the Lord's plan unfold amid their failure? As they set their eyes forward, the promise came whispering through the winds: a storm was brewing that would reveal God's sovereignty in ways they had not yet considered. The time approached for miraculous signs that would astonish the nations and fortify his people. And it came to pass, as the children of Israel dwelled within the walls of their covenant, that word reached them of the rising tumult in the land. The kings of the Amorites, 5 in number: Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem; Hoam, king of Hebron; Piram, king of Jarmuth; Japhia, king of Lachish; and Debir, king of Eglon, conspired together, their hearts filled with rage against Israel. They gathered their mighty forces, intent on smiting Gibeon for the pact it had made with the Israelites. When the Gibeonites heard of this gathering storm, they sent messengers unto Joshua at the camp in Gilgal, saying, Do not forsake your servants. Come up quickly and save us, for all the kings of the Amorites have gathered against us. Joshua, sensing the weight of their plea, called upon the assembly. Fear not, for the Lord has given us this land, and he will deliver our enemies into our hands. We shall go forth and fight for the Gibeonites, for in joining with them, we have bound ourselves to their defense. The Lord will not abandon his promises. So, under the cover of night, Joshua and all the warriors of Israel moved with haste, marching toward Gibeon. As they approached, the heavens were filled with an unnatural stillness, and the night seemed to tremble beneath the promise of battle. On that night, the Lord spoke again to Joshua, saying, "Do not fear them, for I have delivered them into your hand. Not a single one of them shall stand against you." With a heart bolstered by the words of the Lord, Joshua pressed on. Upon reaching Gibeon, the Israelite army roused a great shout, and the land reverberated with the sound of their battle cry. The Amorites, taken by surprise, were thrown into disarray, their ranks breaking at the fierce onslaught of the children of Israel. As the battle ensued, a tremendous miracle unfolded. The Lord cast down great stones from heaven upon the Amorites, and many perished under the weight of divine judgment. The children of Israel fought valiantly, emboldened by the presence of the Lord, whom they called upon in their hour of need. Yet, as the sun began to descend toward the horizon, Joshua, in a moment of profound faith, cried out to the Lord, "Sun, stand still over Gibeon, and moon, in the valley of Ajalon." And the Lord heeded the voice of a man, and the sun stood still, and the moon halted until the nation avenged itself upon its enemies. Such a day had never been before, nor would it ever be again, for the Lord fought for Israel. In that astonishing moment, the boundaries of human understanding were breached, time itself suspended to fulfill divine purpose. When the dust of battle settled, the victory was complete. With their enemies vanquished, Joshua and the Israelites gathered the spoils of the fight and turned their hearts in gratitude toward the Lord. They marveled at his wonders, their faith renewed and their allegiance strengthened, but amidst the celebration, a lingering question stirred within the hearts of the people. This great intervention had called to mind that God's ways were higher than their own, and though they had stumbled, he turned their missteps into instruments of his will. What greater wonders may the Lord yet reveal? They whispered among themselves, an air of divine intrigue tracing through their ranks. For little did they know, the true purpose of their trials with the Gibeonites was but a precursor to the greater narrative that God was weaving for his people. The wheels of prophecy were turning, and the unfolding saga of his faithfulness was set to astonish the ages, beckoning them forward into the unfathomable depths of his sovereign plan. And it came to pass after the defeat of the Amorite kings that Joshua summoned the mighty men of valor, saying, "Gather yourselves unto me, and hear the commands of the Lord, for the victories he has wrought are but the beginning of his great wonders among us." As the warriors assembled, their faces illuminated by the fading light of day, Joshua instructed them, "We must not grow weary in our strength, for the land is yet vast and full of challenge. The Lord commands us to march forth into the land he has promised, to take every city and dispossess the wicked before us." With determined hearts, the Israelite army set forth, taking counsel from their leader. They traveled across the regions of the hill country and down into the valleys, where the inhabitants of the land dwelt in fortified cities, unaware of the judicial hand of the Lord they were soon to face. Joshua led them with the Ark of the Covenant at the forefront, a reminder of their covenant with the Almighty. But behold, as they approached the city of Makkedah, it was revealed to Joshua through a vision that the remnants of the Amorites were gathering once more. The Lord spoke unto him, saying, "Do not fear, for I have placed them into your hands, just as I did before. Arise and strike them with the sword of justice, for your battle is my battle." In that moment, Joshua gathered his captains and the leaders of the 12 tribes, declaring, "Let us prepare for war once more. For the Lord has fated these Amorites for destruction, and we shall strike like the thunder that rends the heavens." With faith igniting their spirits, the Israelites struck with fervor, led by Joshua at the helm. The city of Makkedah met with fierce resistance, yet they were blinded by the wrath of the Lord, and Joshua cried out in spiritual zeal, "This day shall you be an example of the mighty hand of God." The heavens opened, and a storm unlike any other broke forth. As they engaged in battle, the Lord sent forth hailstones, and the earth trembled under the weight of his power. The children of Israel pressed on, their hearts attuned to his promise, believing that every swing of their swords was a testament to the faithfulness of God. And in the heat of the conflict, the sun began to grow dim, yet the people did not waver. For Joshua had learned to cry out, to beseech the heavens for clarity. O Lord, grant us the victory this day, and let our light not fade until we have avenged the wrongs done against us. And behold, it happened as before, the sun stood still again, and time surrendered to the commands of the faithful leader. The sword of Israel prevailed, the Amorites were defeated. All who opposed them perished under the covenant bearing the marks of the Lord's will. After the fierce wind of battle had settled, Joshua gathered the people and proclaimed, through our God, we have wrought a mighty victory. Yet remember, the glory belongs to the Lord. Tomorrow, we return to the history of our people, to learn from these encounters, knowing they are but shadows of what is to come. As they looked upon the fall of Makkedah, a profound silence settled upon the Israelites. They began to ponder, what further wonders await us within this land? Was this not merely the beginning of the Lord's breathtaking exhibitions of power? Among them, leaders began to seek further from the prophet, questioning, what might the Lord's sovereign plan unfurl next? For we have seen but a glimpse of his overarching design in our journey of faith. So the stage was set, and the whispers of anticipation filled the air, for they knew not yet the fullness of what was to come, a truth woven deeply in the fabric of their covenant that would echo through generations unto the coming of the one who would fulfill every divine promise. As the sun rose on another day, signaling a turning of a divine page, Joshua stood upon the soil that cradled God's promise, where every victory and trial became a testimony etched in the annals of history. The dust settled after the victorious battles, and the hearts of the people brimmed with wonder. They had witnessed the mighty hand of God, yet Joshua knew that the journey was marked not just by conquest, but by a call to holiness and fidelity to the covenant. Come forth, O Israel! Joshua cried, his voice ringing clear. The Lord has led us through the trials of the past, that we may become a testimony for the nations. We stand today upon hallowed ground, for the Lord has delivered us from enemies and established us in this land. The people gathered before him, their souls ignited with anticipation. Let us renew our covenant with the Lord. He proclaimed, the weight of sacred responsibility resting heavily upon his heart. For in our unity and submission to his will, our triumph will echo through generations. Joshua lifted the book of the law in his hands, a reminder of their sacred heritage, and he read aloud the commandments given to them. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words which I command you today shall be in your heart. Each word reverberated, feeding their spirits and intertwining with the covenantal promise. As they listened attentively, hearts began to ignite with collective commitment. Gripped by a holy conviction, the congregation echoed, we will obey all that the Lord has commanded. His word shall guide our paths. In that moment, the air trembled with divine acceptance, as their vow merged with the soft whispers of heaven. With the masses unified, Joshua led them to Shechem, the site of sacred renewal where ancestors once stood in reverence to the Lord. Let us erect stones as a witness, he urged, reminding future generations of the faithfulness demonstrated here today. Each stone hoisted became a monument to their devotion, sturdy markers of who they were called to be. Yet shadows lingered around the horizon, for behind the victories, the people must never forget the remnants of disobedience that marred their hearts. Joshua, led by the Spirit, summoned the elders and leaders of the tribes. We must remember our sacred trust, he warned. For the Lord's favor hinges upon our fidelity in loyalty and justice. Their hearts echoed an understanding, knowing the price of blessing was devotion. Joshua elevated Rahab's decision to hide the spies, recounting her legacy, a legacy of faith born out of obedience. Let us reach out to the nations around us, sharing the compassion that saved her, he implored. For we are called to carry forth justice, not merely conquest. And so, with hearts open and eyes fixed upon divine purpose, they sought not glory alone, but sought the Lord's face. All the while, whispers of neighboring lands reached their ears, tales of kings who trembled at the news of them, a testimony shadowing their steps. Days turned into weeks, yet unity remained their shield and commitment their sword. As the Israelites reflected upon their victories and transgressions, a season of peace enveloped them. It was then that God, in his divine wisdom, prepared their hearts for further challenges, and the nations began to stir restlessly. In the twilight of calm, a council of nations arose with scheming hearts. The enemies saw Israel's strength and sought to extinguish the flames of faith ignited within. When word reached the land of Canaan of their alliance, Joshua rallied the people once more. Fear not. For whosoever stands against the army of the living God shall know the strength of his hand. With renewed fervor, they sought guidance once more. Let us humbly inquire of the Lord. They proclaimed, knowing that victory belongs not to the mighty but to those who trust in his name. The priests approached the Ark of the Covenant, and God answered from the clouds, a heavenly affirmation of adventure yet unseen. As the long-anticipated storm brewed over the horizon, the foes gathered intending to quench the call of the faithful. The Israelites strengthened their resolve to fight with the assurance that God's presence would never depart from them. With the joy of the Lord ignited in their hearts, they marched boldly into the fray, armed with bows of worship and hearts bared for fidelity to the covenant made generations before. As the clamor of battle rose around them, they remembered his words, "Stand firm, and therefore, our God will fight for us." With this, Joshua raised his voice unto heaven. O Lord, render a judgment that brings forth freedom. For by your mighty hand, we shall emerge proclaiming your faithfulness. And so, the clash resonated with fervor beyond earthly measure, as Israel stood firm, intertwined within God's sovereign design. The presence of the Lord descended upon the battlefield, and heavens opened, graced by the cries of faithful hearts. As the dust settled once more upon that land, hearts filled with gratitude for every trial that shaped their journey. In the aftermath, Joshua stood before the assembly, his heart ablaze. Today, we write our narrative upon the foundation of faith. Today, we rejoice in the Lord's covenant that we shall bear through generations. We shall be a people marked by righteousness, justice, and love. The everlasting truth will echo in the halls of eternity because of our obedience to him. And as the people echoed Amen, a legacy carved anew was born from those who stood, unyielded in faith, carrying forth the promise of God to the ends of the earth, a promise that transcends time, echoing into eternity. So, hear this call, beloved. Rise up, anchored in his steadfast love. In the chaos of this world, let us carry forth his truth. Do not wait another second. Subscribe immediately to the channel, that you may stay connected to God's word. Like and share this revelation that it may reach the hearts hungering for hope in every corner. Speak in the comments, share your reflections, and tell us how this mighty story has transformed your faith. And remember, you have the power to bring light to others. Share instantly this message with at least 5 friends, for God's truth is a treasure to be multiplied in abundance. In this urgency, let our voices rise, understanding the significance of standing together in his name.